I feel like I had to relinquish control of the timing of everything and just be like, all right, well, I clearly can't control this. I kept wanting to like know what date my retrieval would be. And they were like, we can't tell you yet.
You guys, I do not get on a flight anymore without my Bombas compression socks. They are a travel staple for me, especially on longer flights. The socks help improve blood flow from your legs to your heart, which obviously is so essential. I just love these socks so much, and I want you guys to have an opportunity to check out these socks too. So use our code QTC20 for 20% off your first purchase of Bombas. We are back and joined for the third time by my dear friend, Lauren. So welcome back for the third time.
I hope people aren't sick of me yet.
We have lots to share, and we are going to update everybody because the last time you were here, you were just about to start your egg freezing journey. And since then you have been through your egg freezing journey. And I think we've had a few guests that have come on multiple times, and I love the progression of the journey and being able to share every part of it, because every part of it is challenging and difficult, brings up things. There's things we learn. So we now have it all documented here for you.
I love it. It was like the pre-contemplation, the contemplation, the action, like you've gotten all the steps.
Yeah. And those are all the therapy terms for everybody that is listening. But those are the stages, like the decision making. But before we jump into your experience, I wanted to talk about the event you just did that I so sadly missed with Flourish Heights. And you talked about your egg freezing experience, and you were so nice to send me the video because I couldn't make it, and the speech was amazing. But I wanted you to share what you talked about, because I loved how you talked about scarcity mindset, approaching egg freezing versus going into it with an abundant mindset. And you shared there were times during your path that you might have considered doing that from a more scarcity place. So I'd love for you to speak about that here, because I love that you shared that.
Thank you for watching it.
Of course.
For always supporting me. You're like the best person ever. When I was talking about the support system, you were texting me like every other day, asking me how I was doing. And that was so amazing. But for the scarcity abundance mindset, I feel like we've touched on this conversation before, like in terms of what energy are you bringing into the process? And I feel like in the past, my almost like negative connotation with egg freezing is you do it from a place of scarcity. You do it when you don't have a partner, or if you are having trouble getting pregnant, or if you think that you will be getting pregnant later in life because your life hasn't gone the way you wanted it to.
Right, exactly.
Right. It's like so negative. All of the ways that I feel like I heard about egg freezing or thought about egg freezing when I was thinking about it. And I think if I did that process at other times in my life where I thought about it and had just like acted impulsively, I probably would have had a really negative overall experience with it. And like been doing it like despite or in spite.
Yeah, 100%.
And the conversation that we had last time where, when I went in for the consultation and they were talking to me about like, how many kids do you want to have? I feel like I started to think about it so much more from this abundance mindset of like, so much is going on right now in the present. I wouldn't want to get pregnant right now. Wouldn't even know if I would want to be married right now or be planning that kind of thing. For the right now, I want to have abundant opportunities in the future. I want to be able to focus on the right now, focus on every step of the process, focus on, if everything goes well, like why aren't we thinking of it with that? And I would say this to a client too.
I know. You're touching on all the things I want to talk about.
It's like with a client, I would be like, and what if it goes great? And
oh my God, the amount of times I have to say that because, clients we all do it, like catastrophize or worst case scenario. I said, okay, well, if you're going to think about that, then you have to at least think about the other side of it. Like, what is the other side of it? Like, what if it does go well? What if you do get the thing? Or like just opening up the lens to different options. Right.
Like there could be no issues getting pregnant at all. And this was just an extra safety net that I tried to do to feel like I was in control. And it gave me a lot of peace of mind at the time. And that's the most useful, best case scenario I could put out there. And I always say to clients, there's a medium place that we could also talk about too, where it's like maybe 1 is easy, 2 is hard, 3 is mid 40s. And that's where we need the egg. Is like, I don't know.
Right.
I think going into it with the mindset of this is something that I want for my future because I'm feeling very abundant and very excited about it. Was like so much better for my headspace.
Absolutely. And that is so important as you go through this.
Right. Yeah. And we know that the headspace that you are in during the process can feel like it's not even your own headspace because of all the hormones.
Lots of fluctuations.
And stuff that's going on. So I feel like at least just having some like grounding in how I wanted to be thinking about it. I didn't even do it on purpose, but once I was like doing the speech and like talking about what I wanted to talk about, I realized that this is something I talk about with clients all the time. This was actually something that I did. I like shifted this narrative so naturally because I work on this stuff all the time with myself and with others. And it really helped me make this process from like a more like positive mindset, not to like gaslight yourself. Like I always like worry about toxic positivity too, but like I think it really is important when you can have a realistic and also like leaning towards positive mindset.
100%. And I think, you know, a lot of narrative work I do with clients too is just like little shifts are so powerful. And as you're talking, I'm like thinking that I have to, which is the place from where I froze my eggs, which is I have to do this. I'm running out of time. My partner and I aren't aligned yet, changed my experience tremendously. It was, you know, sometimes you hear the word empowering when people talk about egg freezing. It was not that at all. But I went at it from the I have to do this mindset. And yours was like the abundant, like I get to do this. And I think you can apply that to anything. Like I get to get up and do the workout. I get to, you know, work at this job that provides me the things that I have. Like just that little shift sometimes of that I have to I get to.
But you are one of the reasons why I was able to do that because of the conversations that I've had with you about this throughout this and how we are so similar and how you and I really share a lot of the same qualities of personhood. But like that you were kind of sharing and so vulnerable about that is the place that you like had to make this decision from. And that it was, you know, at times like, you know, a little bit of resentment or like other things coming up. And I think that's what helped me be really proactive about it. Well, knowing that about myself, right. And knowing that I have a huge tendency of like being that way. I think it wouldn't have been possible without these, like you talk about pain to purpose, like my favorite thing you've ever done and like put out there is so vulnerable, but like, when you talk about those things, I think it helps other people be able to make decisions from a different place.
Oh, I appreciate you saying that. I mean, that's the whole goal and the intention of this podcast, because for me, it was very painful and from I have to place that was really hard and challenging. And so, yeah, the goal is like, I want to safeguard anyone from having to go to it because I do believe, and you're living proof that it does change the experience tremendously.
And the ripple effect is so real because you had these conversations with me. You're doing this podcast out in the world. I start talking about it on social media. My best friend from college finds that her insurance is paying for most of it and she's about to leave her job. So she decides to do it a month after me.
Amazing.
Like if we just really look at all of the people that might decide to do this or to, you know, even just look at their options based off of other people having conversations about it, like it's spreading. It's really exciting to see.
It's so amazing just to see other women talking about this because I think the trend is shifting. I think around when I did it, no one else was talking about it. I know that a lot of women were finding themselves at like they're at 35 plus. And now, you know, we're seeing women doing it in their 20s, being mindful of doing it before they're 30. So I think it's things are shifting in a really nice way that will allow women to have a very different experience. So speaking of experiences, tell us all about yours.
I know. Okay. So we talked about control a little bit right before we even started recording. And I was like, oh, control was like the number one thing for me because I don't want to use the word psychopath, but I'm using it not in a stigmatizing way, but in a more colloquial way, the way we use psychopath. I am a pretty nutty about my schedule and I like to have control over my schedule, and I wanted to do this at a time where I didn't have much going on. And so I picked a very specific day. And then I went in and they were like, your body is not ready to start this process yet. And I was like, what do you mean?
I know, because I thought I saw you the night you were supposed to start.
Yes.
Like, I'm going home. I'm doing my first shot. I'm like, amazing. I
was like so ready. And they were like, no. And so my process was even longer because I had like an extra week of the ultrasounds and the blood work. So I was going in there like every couple of days for like what felt like a really long time.
Isn't it, it's so weird. The time is like, it feels so long, but also then and then it's over and you're like, wait, what? The time is just weird.
And then like everybody's process is so different because I just said my friend did it and hers was like maybe 10 or 11 days. Mine was like, so I think mine was like 16, like, or 17. Like it was like, I did the shots for a while. So I finally got to start the shots. Michael's not home. And I'm like, okay, like, it's not your fault, but like, okay, I got to do this by myself. I feel like there was like so many learning curves. I feel like I had to relinquish control of the timing of everything and just be like, all right, well, I clearly can't control this. I kept wanting to like know what date my retrieval would be. And they were like, we can't tell you yet.
That's what's so hard is because you don't, and like as business owners and people that work with other people that rely on us being there, like shuffling that around. I remember doing that. It was so hard.
And like, luckily I got to like get in to my ultrasounds. Like it was like 15 minutes walk from my apartment. So like I would get to go in and do those pretty early in the morning, have my regular day. Like those didn't impede anything, but I was worried about the retrieval being on a Thursday because I always have to take Thursdays off. And now I'm really stressed about my Thursday girls. Like, they're going to be mad at me. Like I was really just telling myself so many stories. Like nobody cares.
Do that for everybody listening as therapists. We worry about the scheduling.
I'm like, okay, you can't take too many people off on the same day. They're going to be frustrated with me. I try to just be as transparent as possible. And I don't think that they care at all. Really,
no, they don't. That's just our own narratives and stuff.
So I do the shots the first night, and I think I texted you this next day, and I told you it was like kind of rough. I was like really like almost passed out, and I was like, okay, thought I had a really high tolerance for pain, guess not. And then the second night, Michael's helping me with it. Then I really almost passed out, and I'm like in the fetal position calling my mom, and my mom's like, I don't know how to help you right now. Mike's like, we shouldn't do this anymore. I don't like this.
You told me something. I hope we can share that here, but you were texting me, or you shared something with me. You're like, let me just tell you the story about the shots last night. And you said Mike was like all nervous, had the shaky hand. You're like, get out of here. Give me the needle. I'm going to do it.
He was so nervous the whole time. He really doesn't like to hurt me, which is like so sweet, of course, obviously. But like, I would be watching it. I would almost be like more nervous about him getting it in there, right? That I would be, it was the trigger shot that I was like, just give me that because we can't mess.
Let me handle that one.
But it was like very much a learning curve. I was really grateful that I had talked to people about it and that I had shared because, you were checking in on me. A friend from grad school sent me a video of her and her partner doing it when she was going through IVF, and like, just like little things like that, like people who had to do shots in their stomach for other things would be like the 2-finger rule, like all these things that you don't know until you start doing it. Like stick the ice pack in your pants for 20 minutes before. You'll feel so much better. Like that kind of stuff that I just didn't even think about, didn't even know. I was like, I'm good with pain. It'll be totally fine.
But that's the thing too with these experiences. Like, and again, as amazing it is that everyone's talking about, there's still things you're going to learn by going through it, right? There's things that are, and I'm curious for you, like things that surprised you besides what you've already shared. But I think until you go through it, even as much as you've seen or as much as you talked about with other people, because everybody's experience is so different.
And the messages and stuff, I was getting people saying like, oh, I was so hormonal. I was like pain. I was so bloated. I was fine for the most part. I still like kept up with my walks. I was like, I'm just kicking ass at this thing. Like classic perfectionist. Yeah. Like I'm great at egg freezing. Like, I don't know why that's important to me, but I was like, this isn't that bad. I feel like I haven't been too high highs, low lows. Like I was like, I think I'm okay. And then I got rocked with the aftermath.
Yes. Share about that. That was something that really unexpected and surprised you.
So unexpected, so surprising. They like briefly mentioned it to me that I was at risk for it towards the end. Like,
so they had said, okay.
They didn't really explain to me what it was and what to expect. I basically went in for one ultrasound with one of the ultrasound techs that I really loved. She was so nice to me. And she was like, are you okay? And I was like, what do you mean?
I'm fine. You're like, I'm crushing this. What are you talking about?
I'm having a great time. No, she was like, your ovaries are huge. Like they said they got like 3 times the size of like what is typical.
And typical for a woman going through egg freezing?
I think so. If I'm understanding it correctly.
Wow.
They were really ginormous. And she was like, usually people are like doubled over in pain. They're like really complaining. They're having a really hard time when this is happening. And I was like, I'm good. Again, I like think I have such a high pain tolerance, and like I'm like, I don't, whatever.
You're like, I got this. I'll figure it out.
But that's, I think, why also my thing was so long, is because they were trying to be greedy and get as many eggs as they could with them being so big. But then I briefly get this like written thing about ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome for afterward, but no one really explained to me what it was going to be like, how long it was going to last. And I was so freaked out. I went back to work the next day. I'm like sitting in my chair all day. I'm like doing my typical stuff. And I was like taking it easy, but I was like so bloated, so uncomfortable. Thought I was going to have to go to the ER at one point because I thought my bladder was going to burst. I was like freaking out. Mike's not home. I like had all these issues with my insurance at the beginning of the year. I was like, it's going to be $50,000 if I go to the ER. I can't go. I just have to try and go to bed and maybe I'll pee at some point. Like I was like so freaked out by this aftermath experience. And as someone who's recovered from an eating disorder too, I feel like I'm like so good with that stuff most of the time, but my body being so unlike anything I've ever experienced and like so different, you know, when you struggle with body dysmorphia, I think it's hard to tell what's real and what's not and what's temporary and what's not. And I was just really struggling in that like week or so aftermath of
it was an entire week.
It was a while.
Wow.
It like really didn't feel back to normal in terms of like how my body was like readjusting until like a week or so afterward.
What do you wish you had known about that previously? Like, what do you think, what information would have helped you in that week?
More pee breaks. They did tell me to eat really high protein and fiber one, and like you were going to need more fiber in your diet, continuing with the like Gatorade Zero or like liquid IV, anything that was like really high electrolyte. That helped me a lot. I was just feeling so off. Like I think if someone had just warned me in my mind, the retrieval was going to be the worst part. In my mind, it was like the shots and the retrieval. And then after the retrieval, you're done. So like, I really thought that's, and I guess maybe that's naive, or like, I just maybe wasn't aware or wasn't paying attention, but like, that is what I now caution people on is like, your body is going to go through some massive changes during this time. It is temporary. Just remember that, keep your head down, and also like just be aware that this risk might take some time.
And I think that's important. And I think one of your events that I was at, you were like, has anyone talked about this yet? Because no one told me about it. We should talk about that on the podcast. And we have another woman coming on that had suffered with the same aftermath and did end up in the ER. But I do think it is, you know, as we're having all these conversations, there are so many parts that are not talked about. And even my going through my experience with how trying to have a second, like I'm learning so much more. So I don't think it's that we are naive. I just think that we're putting a lot of trust in doctors to completely inform us of the whole picture.
Right.
And maybe something's getting lost in that just mentioning it is not enough. Like we should know more about potential side effects and aftermath.
Right. And it's like, it said it could be 5 to 7 days on the paper, and that the 5th day could be the worst. And I was like, oh God, I'm like only on day 2. Like just a few things that I was really happy about having the messaging system with the nurses back and forth, because they were the ones who were saying like,
so you had like a online.
Yeah.
Like
so like while
we're typing.
Well, yeah, I would have been like this.
What's
actually.
The word for that?
we're doing like old school movements, but I was like texting essentially with this nurse throughout the entire night.
That's amazing.
The next day. And then she's like, you know, well, one of the things that was super triggering is I had to monitor my weight every day. So that's something that people who are in recovery should be aware of. Like my friends and I were joking. They're like, oh yeah, that's going to be great for you. Like as somebody who doesn't do that or makes a practice of not doing that because intentionally I don't worry about that. But
taking your weight
because if you have like a drastic spike and continuation of weight gain is the when you would want to go to the hospital. So there were some things that you would needed to be like looking out for. And I did have a bit of a spike. So like there were these things that were happening that were all very confusing and also triggering at the same time. So, you know, I'm glad I mentioned that, because I think that's something that people should be aware of. Like I just had to keep saying to myself, this is what my doctors are asking me to do. Just keep doing what the doctors are asking you to do. It's just objective. It's data for the doctors. It's making sure you're not going to end up in the hospital. Like, just don't look at the number. Just keep moving on.
I think that is, especially as someone who is in recovery, it's so challenging and the numbers are so hard. And I think obviously the overall like idea of the podcast is the quiet the clock and the time and all these things. In my journey, and I was saying this to you off camera, one of the things my nutritionist hormone specialist is having me to do is check my body temperature. And the numbers fuck with your head so bad. And I keep telling her that. I was like, this is stressing me out, because then you go down the Google rabbit hole of like, why is my body temperature so low? Why is it so high? It should be high if it means all these things. And then when you look at the number and it's not that, like I have a hard time with that too. Like I get so stuck on the number, and now I'm like, oh, I left it at home. Fuck it. I'm not doing it. Like the control, right? To control everything, that the number has to look perfect, that you have to like do it all perfectly. It's hard.
Well, and even I know you haven't struggled with an eating disorder, but we've been talking about like how you've been cooking and how you've had to cut out a lot of things from your diet, and how, mentally restricting is difficult for anybody, whether they've struggled with active restriction from eating disorder stuff or not. So it's just like, it's really difficult that these like physical and mental things can sometimes go hand in hand, and you can maybe want to do something that's best for your fertility, but might not be best for you mentally. And you have to like make those
concessions. And I know. I love and appreciate, one, you being so open and vulnerable and sharing, but two, that we're talking about this because we haven't talked about what that would mean or what this process would be like for somebody recovering from an eating disorder. Because
I was like, what am I going to do when I'm pregnant? That's gonna be a long time of body dysmorphia. I better make sure I'm like, I've got all my tools ready to go, because I just didn't even think, I'm so recovered in the day to day. I did not even think it was going to faze me.
And it's interesting to think about it, just because, as you brought up, like I'm going through that too, of all the things. It's almost like, and I myself have not experienced an eating disorder, but my sister has. So I was very close to that. And I can see what that looks like and how that manifests daily, and the restrictions and what give yourself permission to do. And, thinking about it now, it does really translate for me. And like you mentioned, all the things I'm trying to do for my health and my fertility health, because it's like, don't have the coffee. And then it's like, but I had a sip of coffee. Oh my God, that's so bad. Or don't have the gluten. And then you have the cookie and you're like, shit, I shouldn't have had the cookie. And so it feels there's similarities between sort of the mindsets there that can be really, really hard.
Most eating disorders start out because people are trying to focus on their health. A lot of that, like orthorexia, right? Like you're trying to like only put good things into your body, and the intention can be so good. And then sometimes the mental effect can be so taxing. And I think that when I have checked in with you a little bit and you've been like, I'm just, letting myself, I let myself have one drink. I let myself have a couple of things. I'm trying to, I think mentally that can even be like the best way to do it, is like focus on what's best for you, focus on what your doctors are saying most of the time, and then allow yourself to be like as like compassionate about the life stuff as you can, because you still have to live your life throughout this process.
Well, I know. And that's like a motto I am like, or a mantra, I guess I'm saying to myself, like life is meant to be lived. And so if that means a cocktail, or if that means a cookie, or if that means like sitting outside and not in front of your computer, like that's the stuff that I've been trying to do for my life, for myself this last month. And it's a game changer, but it's work, it's intentional work.
Right. And thinking of it like, if that brings your stress down, and if you're also trying to bring your stress down and you're trying to work on your physical body health, then maybe those two things are working together if you're not being as extreme in one area or the other. But it's like, oh my God, it's so much to think about.
Another job on top of the 10 jobs you already have.
400 jobs, both of us.
400, yes, combined. 400 jobs combined. Because I have other topics I want to talk to you about. Anything else you would say about your experience? Anything you would want to pay forward to somebody else thinking about doing this? Anything that you felt like went really well, whether it was the clinic or, again, the abundant mindset, or, just big takeaways for you that you want to pay forward?
Support system, I think, was the only thing that I didn't touch on yet, in like being vulnerable, allowing people to support you, calling people. Like, I don't call my mom all the time. Sorry, Mom. I love you. But like, I don't call my mom. I'm not like the person who calls her mom and like talks to her mom every day. Like it was weird for me to be like, I don't feel good. But she was there, and then she was like calling me to be like, how is this on your relationship? Is it putting stress on your relationship? Are you okay? Like, just
answer that for us.
I know it was
a great question.
Well,
Mom.
I was hormonal when she called and asked me that, and I was like, "What do you mean?" I was like not understanding that she was asking it.
I love that question. I didn't think to ask that question, but that's a good one because you guys did it together.
Did do it together, and it was good. It was good on our relationship. Michael always like prioritizes family over everything. I've noticed that about him ever since I met him, and so like he was always there to help with the shots whenever he could be. And then like if I did want to do it myself, or if I had plans or whatever else, if he wasn't needed, if his services weren't needed, I was like, it's totally fine, you don't have to come home or whatever. But it was a good question my mom asked, because she was like, I know these things can be really stressful on relationships. And she's like, I'm not saying that it is. I'm not criticizing you. I'm not doing any of that. And that was helpful for her to like spell it out for me because I needed it at the time. But she was like, I just know that this can be hard on people's relationships. So I wanted to check in. And so like her and my friends asking about it, and being inquisitive because they might want to do it or might not want to do it, and just seeing how it was and being as much of an open book as you can be, I think is my biggest advice, because if you're open, then people can support you. If you're not open and you just do it alone, then that's a self-fulfilling prophecy of feeling isolated.
And that I think applies to everything, not just exercising. I know. It's hard. I'm also not someone that asks for help. Shocker.
So surprising to me.
But it's so important. And I have to say, I'm really proud of myself, because through this journey, I have such a team of people around me now helping me and supporting myself. And I'm like, oh my God, look at me, like having all this help. And it's moving through that discomfort of asking for help is so important, because it is so incredible to have it.
I still find myself not wanting to do it from like any low points. It's almost like you want to ask for help when things are okay.
I know, it's still hard.
Like not appear weak, or like, I don't know what it is, but when you do, and then when people show up for you, that's like the most rewarding feeling in the whole world.
Yeah. I always try to think about it, and this is like my therapist's mind too, because I always try to like, let's role reverse here. Like what if you were in that situation? And I think some of the biggest narratives some people have, or myself, I'll speak for, is that I don't want to be a burden to anyone else. Like they have so much going on. So I always try to say to myself, well, I would want that person to come to me. Like, I don't care how much I have going on. I love this person. Like, I would feel so honored and special if someone said, I want your help. So I always try to like role reverse that. It's like, okay, and Shelly left the room, but I tell that to Shelly all the time. I tell her I love her and I want to help you. Not in the room.
There she is. Good. Like, that's the best kind of friend to have.
I know.
Is someone who's consistently telling you that, so then you feel more comfortable actually doing it.
Yeah. But I agree with you. Like, the support system is so huge. That's one thing I like hammer home to people, is like, have that in place before you even start this process.
Don't do it in secret, because a lot more people will understand than I think we think that they will. I think that was my biggest fear, was like, people are not going to get it. They're going to be like, she has somebody, she's still young, she doesn't need to be doing this, she can just get pregnant naturally. And there was some of that, but mostly it was not that. Mostly it was like, my aunt, who I never expected to get it, she doesn't have kids, and she's very big fears of the gynecologist. She's like my biggest champion, being like, I think it's awesome. And I'm like, oh my, like the people you didn't expect to really be like the number one person in your corner. That's when it's like even better. And you wouldn't have that if you didn't share.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you can't fully safeguard yourself from all the like negative naysayers, and you're someone that shares so openly on social media. So, like sometimes people are going to totally support you, and, always hope that that's the larger percentage of people. And people's assumptions are interesting. I think it's just a lot of projection of their own shit.
Oh, totally. Or misunderstanding or misinformation.
Yeah.
So people still might just have that like more negative connotation or different mindset about what egg freezing is for and why we do it, like sort of like from the scarcity mindset, or, I thought people only do it in their 40s, is what someone said to me. And I was like, no, actually, it like doesn't make as much sense to do it in your 40s, like biologically. So it's better to do it when you're younger. And like just that education, I think, can even just like, then you shift their mindset, and then they're thinking about stories that they're hearing from friends of friends or whoever in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the power of sharing it.
Yeah.
So when you moved through that like last week of it being really hard, how did you feel? How have you felt having done it? It's behind you, your eggs are on ice.
Well, I am very lucky, and I feel very lucky to have had such an overwhelmingly positive experience. And I did get 24 eggs. So like that was a huge deal.
Amazing. Yeah.
Like that was like, I don't know how I would have felt if it wasn't successful. Like maybe I would have felt very differently. So I want to acknowledge that like the overall experience was totally worth it to me, because I was like, that is okay. I feel great about that.
Yeah.
Like, so I can understand if, you know, someone else might have a really like totally discouraged feeling. I know at the event that you were mentioning, a lot of people had been through many, many different rounds and like
so
many
hard.
unsuccessful rounds. And I didn't have that experience, and I had a very lucky experience. And so I felt great about doing it. I felt really rewarded with like, okay, we can do hard things. Humans are so adaptable. It was like by the end, I'm just like,
Women are so
women
men are too, but like women are
women can do
badasses.
anything. Like, and that was one of the texts my best friend sent me when she was doing it right after me. She's like, men could never. And I was like, it's so true. Like, I'm sorry, guys.
And to the men in the room, sorry.
Sorry. But by the end, I was like, hey, Al, you want to go to dinner? And I just am going to bring my shots with me. And her boyfriend's like horrified. He's like, Lauren was just here shooting up in our apartment.
Oh my God. Yeah. The places you shoot
so
up,
dramatic.
the places I've shot up. I'm like, it's not drugs, I swear.
Like, no, I just needed to bring it with me because we're going to dinner at 7 and my shot window is 7 to 9 and I'm not going back home. Like I brought everything. I put everything back in the sharps container.
I think that's the funnest thing is to learn where like all the different places people have done their shots.
I know. I've seen such good ones on your podcast already. Like bathrooms at festivals. And like that one was like, I don't know how she did that because I could barely combine the two things without watching the video like meticulously every time to be like, why can't I get this? I'm a smart person. But yeah, like it was just like by the end a breeze.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, this is so wild that at the beginning I was like, I don't know if I can do this. I'm going to be passing out every night to like, oh, this isn't so bad.
Yeah. And I feel like that was my same experience too. I think what's so hard again, like, you know, in the work that we do is the sort of the anxiety around the unknowns. And I think a lot of the anxiety for me was the before because the shots and the needles and the meds, and I don't like needles. And then you get into it and you're like, oh, it's actually not that bad. You know, once you're in it, it's more what we make it to be in our minds versus the actual experience.
Absolutely. And it's like, it's not pleasant. It's like
Right,
a
it's
favorite
not
thing you're ever going to do, but neither is going to the gynecologist or like, you know, like
Right,
the dentist.
right, right.
It's things that we can tolerate. I think that's what we forget is like, we have distress and therapists here. We have distress tolerance and like we can build that up and it's a muscle and you can get used to anything, which
I feel like
is
we're using so
crazy.
many therapist buzzwords today.
Look at us. It's like we do this professionally or something.
Something like that. Kind of to pivot, but not completely pivot. Because one of the things we talk about a lot on here is like timelines, pressure of timelines, being patient enough to watch life unfold in ways that we don't control. Do you think that this has helped you with those things in your life, like certain timelines you might have or comparatively hold?
Yeah, I'm in such an interesting place because I have half my friends. I think I mentioned this on the last podcast or maybe just in between, but half my friends.
Or the other podcast.
Yeah,
the other 2 episodes we've done.
I've just talked about this so many times, but half my friends are like married, having kids, or like really like on that path. Half my friends are single. So I don't feel the pressures necessarily from like the immediate. I almost feel like I am still always in a constant struggle myself. I will see a baby and I'm like, oh my God, that baby's so fat. I love it. I want it. Like, and I'm like, I could have a baby tomorrow. And then I do my day to day and I like love living in the city and I love my job and business is going so well. And like, I love going out to eat and I love getting drinks, like just like still like doing all the fun New York stuff. Like, you and I have talked about like, we like have lived life and I'm still really enjoying living this life of, you know, doing all of the things without the strings of, you know,
I'm kind of laughing to myself because Shelly and I were on the way here this morning and I'm like, we're watching everybody like go to yoga or like start the day in the city. I was like, I would never change this for anything in the world. 100% never change this. I was like, but sometimes I daydream about being single and without a child and just what my day, like the life that you're living now. So, and I think that's, I want to normalize that. I don't want anyone to get upset that I said that, but I think that's like, there's truth to that. Like there's still so much freedom in the life that you get to live now. And I think being able to feel really present, grounded, and grateful in that place is huge. And I know I lived a phase of my life where I didn't appreciate it as much because I was so anxious about the timelines and the partnership and the baby. So I think it's so great what you're saying. It's like you were saying earlier, staying present now, enjoying the now.
I do feel like a lot of anxiety of the what if narrative and worst case scenario and fear-based drivers for all the things has like left quite significantly.
Oh, that's amazing.
Since doing
And what
it.
does that feel like for you?
I mean, because I'm just a naturally driven, anxious person who wants all the timeline things to be handled and at least just like have a plan, it feels like very freeing for me. And I do think I'm honestly working through this in real time as we're talking about it, which is so fun because I haven't said a lot of this stuff out loud. But like, I do think that I'm feeling very present and very grounded and very grateful. And like, I am trying to appreciate all of the fun things in life right now while I don't have some of those responsibilities, like, to the point where it's like, I always joke that like when I'm in the suburbs, I'm going to be like, I did it all. I'm finally happy to be here.
I made it. I
can relax and like actually enjoy this phase too, and not be like, oh my God, I'm in the suburb. Like, you know what I think it'll help me with the future, like potential negative view I have. I just love the city so much. I just wish I could stay here forever.
Well, I think there's something, you and I were talking about this off camera too. I think there is something like intuitive, if you tune into it, that will tell you what you're ready for and when. And I think when you're in places where you're more grounded and you're more present and you slow down a little bit, you can start to tune into those things. And we were talking more from a business perspective of like, when we're ready to shift or when we're ready to change things. And I think if you don't do that, at least for me, you're so stuck in the like, I can't do that. I can't leave that client. I can't like, but I think there's like these intuitive cues that start to happen if you tune in them to say, okay, I am ready to cut back my pace a little bit. I am ready to cut that back so I can go do this thing, and just like allowing yourself to tune into those things. Cause I think your inner self will tell you.
You just have to be listening. That's the hardest part. Because I think we're so go and like drive mode that sometimes we don't even take the minute to listen to what our body is telling us, or making spaces for that, I think can be really difficult. So, I mean, I have like a little goal of like trying to journal every day this month, which is like probably not going to happen, but like I'm trying because I want to be actively seeing what's coming out of my brain while I'm trying to be more mindful. Maybe I'll do it most days. I'll probably fall off at some point. But like, I think that can be a way of listening to yourself. I think even just taking like pauses. I remember the last time we were talking about someone reminding you like at the grocery store, like,
oh my God, the checkout lady.
You just need to like slow down.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yes.
And if we don't slow down for even just like a second every day, or like take a mindful pause to like listen to what's going on.
That stopped me in my tracks.
You're going
to miss it all. Like you're going to turn around. It's like my son turns 3 next week. I'm like, how
is that happening? Oh my God.
I don't know. But yeah, I think the slowing down is so important, kind of like tuning in. So you can be driven and guided by it, like authentically what you want and when you want it. And I think that's what becomes so hard, is not only is there external noise, expectations, but our own self is like telling us, I should have this, I should do that, I should, do all these things. We're moving so fast all the time.
Well, and if I want to be present, I guess, in motherhood at some point, I think I have to be present where I am now, or I won't be able to be as present as I'm going to want to be later on, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but I think it's like, present always, like whatever phase.
True. If this, then that is still clearly how my brain is working.
It's how all our brains work, and that's why we have to be so intentional about shifting it.
Yeah.
It's so important. As a therapist, you're an amazing, amazing therapist. Do you see a lot of this in your work, these things that we're talking about in terms of like timeline? And you work with a lot of women too, right?
I do work with a lot of women. I do work with a lot of young women in their like early 20s.
Okay.
And it's so interesting. I was actually just writing a blog post about your early 20s because someone had asked me for advice for it. And I was like, my biggest thing is like, just be messy. Just like,
oh my God, I tell people the same thing. Oh my God, I said, in your 20s, you're supposed to be like, drunk and broke and partying and traveling and
eating $1 slice on the side of the road. Like I'm like, be messy and embrace the messiness. And I think that's that same phase of like, enjoy every stage of life that you are in. Cause I hear it from clients who are like, I'm never going to find anybody. And I'm like, what are you talking about? You'll find him later.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to find him right now. He's not in Murray Hill. He is somewhere else waiting for you at some point. And it's like, if you had a crystal ball that told you were going to get everything you ever wanted, how would you live day to day? And that's like one of the biggest things that I talk through with people. It's like, once we can change that mindset, and I work with a lot of people in their, 30s and beyond as well. And I think that that's where we can really make a lot more shifts. I think that it's like the scarcity mindset in the early 20s of like just wanting to date and wanting to like,
and I think just normalizing that that's okay, right? Not that we should be doing something else or it should look a different way. Like that's,
And there's like so much that's solidified in your early 20s, like career, dating, like so many things are not like maybe where we want them to be. So we hyper fixate on all of them. I find with my clients who are a little bit older, we can sometimes more successfully shift the mindset to your partner is coming and the partner is going to be the cherry on top of this life that is so full and so good that you don't have to chokehold the process as much because you know that this is an additive. And that's some of the best work that I've seen done around dating. And I've seen so much success actually in my clients who have approached it that way. Once we get into that mindset, they actually are like swiping and going out into the world with that mindset.
Changes everything.
Then they meet people and then they're like, wait, this is actually fun. And that guy was not a good fit, but like, I'm going to keep going. And it's almost like less of that defeatist mindset where when you meet somebody and you already have the scarcity mindset, you get rejected and then you never want to go on the apps again. And then you go through those like cycles of like, okay, I'm off. I'm out of the dating game. I'm never going to find anyone. And I've been in that place so many times in my life.
Oh my gosh, same. I'm never going to meet anybody.
And I'm like, okay, well, even, not saying I want this, but even tomorrow, I think now at this stage in my life, if anything happened between me and Mike, and I'm not asking for that, but I think I would have the ability to now shift my mindset to like, okay, well, then it wasn't the right thing. And what's going to be the right thing, I guess. But that takes so much work to change your mindset into that space and like really truly believe that everything like does happen for a reason and that your story is unfolding in the timeline that it's supposed to.
I know it's hard. One thing I struggle with a lot, and I've talked about it a lot on here, is patience to see those things unfold. And I think attaching to this idea that it is going to come, if you know, and I've had that advice given to me as I'm navigating like a second baby, like what if it's already said and done? Like, it's said, it's done, it's happening. How would you live your life each day? And trying to attach that has been very helpful because I would release the chokehold on thing. But I think the patience can be really hard to stay patient until those things unfold, which like, if you can do it, amazing. And I think some days you can't, that's okay too. But it's wild to watch. And I think this is probably for you too. And this is another question I have for you is like, when you arrive at the things that you wanted, you're kind of like, oh, well, that makes perfect sense. Or, oh, that was the perfect timing.
Exactly. I mean, I've talked about like the trajectory of even like meeting Michael and like how we were not even looking for each other when we found each other. And like, that's the kind of thing where it's so annoying when you're told that when you're single. Oh my Nobody wants to hear that.
Yeah. Oh my God. I relate so heavily and hard on that because everybody around me was in relationships. They're like, oh my God, you're going to meet him when you least expect it. I'm like, shut the fuck up. And then I met Rob, and literally, I'm not even kidding. I met Rob, and I'm like, oh, these assholes were right. They were all fucking right. This whole time they were right.
And that's what I was just about to say, even to the crystal ball comment of hearing that on your end right now, if it's all set in stone, I think that can be received well when we're in one headspace, and it can be received poorly when we're in another headspace. And sometimes we need to be in that grieving or in the frustration of it because we need to be feeling the process fully. And that's where it's always this give and take with like, validate your own emotions and feel them and move through them, but don't stay stuck in them, because there's other emotions that we can add to this experience as well, and other mindsets that we can also adopt, even though we only tend to want to think one thing and feel one thing. We can have multifaceted like views on everything that we're going through and feel all the things, even if it's hard.
Yeah, I always tell my clients, like, let's just get more expansive, right? Like, just make more room for more thoughts, make more room for different narratives, make more room for different perspective, because it's like, it can be this or that. Like, I have to think this or feel this, or I have to think that. I was like, no, just like make a bigger circle where everything fits in and let everything have its own space.
I'm totally stealing. My clients are going to hear the word expansive over the next 6 months. Sorry to you guys if you're listening. I love stealing things from other therapists. And
all yours, girl. All yours. All yours. And my last thing for you is, I have watched your journey. I've had the pleasure to know you for so long, and I am just watching so many amazing things happen for you, just personally and professionally. And just what would you say to even just yourself and other people listening of like, did you see yourself here? Were there moments like you just were so anxious to be here that you didn't imagine this, and now you're here?
I'm going to go back to another conversation we had a really long time ago, where it's right back at you, because I've watched you grow and change and be vulnerable and open up in a way that I never even expected. And like, I'm so proud, and you're gaining so much success from it as well. I remember you telling me it's all coming. It's going to be better than you imagined. You're going to make money. It's going to be great. Like, it's all going to be worth it. And there were times where I was like, I don't know. It's like true for Beth, but I'm not sure if it's going to be true for me. And all of our limiting beliefs about ourselves are so dead wrong. My life is in a place, you would have told me this and I would have been like, no.
I knew it. I told you.
I would have been like, that's not going to be me. So it's like everything I wanted and more has happened for me. And I've done a lot of work to get here. Don't get me wrong. I'm not like discounting that, but like, if I only wanted one thing or put the cap on what was possible for me, I wouldn't be here. And now it's like doors have opened that I never even thought about. So it's like your advice was so true and more. And sometimes we can't see ourselves the way that other people see us and like the potential that we may have, because I was like, I kept being like, I'll be okay if it's just this, and it'll be fine if that's just that. And like, I wish I could have like dreamed a little bit more to be like, what if I could do that? Like,
well, now you can.
I still like in a little bit of disbelief, and then I'm like, don't get too excited, Lauren. But I guess, I think if I looked back, I would have been like, be more excited, dream a little bit more.
Be
like,
more excited.
Believe what other people are telling you. Believe in yourself.
Believe what is possible. I think it's if we allow ourselves to believe it, it's limitless.
I love that.
You can steal that one too.
I'll steal it too. Perfect.
Any parting words? What's it like to be here for the third time? Anything else you want to say? We love having you here. We love having your voice being heard by everybody.
This, I think, was my favorite conversation I've ever had. I mean, like on any podcast or speaking out loud about any topic, I feel like we talked about so many facets of mental health and fertility journey, and like, I'm just so happy to be here.
Yeah, I love everything that you brought today, and just like, it just opens up my eyes to all the other topics and conversations, and sharing about women that have struggled with eating disorders and what that would be like for them going through this process. It's not something we've talked about yet, so I appreciate you bringing that up, and I'd love to talk about that more. Just your experience post egg freezing, that's important to talk about. So yeah, this is amazing, and I'm just gonna keep bringing you back.
I will come back anytime you want me. I will talk about anything. I literally thought of maybe freezing my eggs at some point in my life, and came on to talk about why I would maybe want to do that, and now I've done it. So that's just a crazy thing that has happened in the time that I've been on this podcast.
I know, it's all
you've created it, and truly, people wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for these types of conversations. So
I'm grateful to be able to have them. I'm grateful that they're helpful to people. I mean, that's the intention. I'm just grateful for you too, to be here and share your story. So
I'm so grateful for you. Thank you.
If you're someone struggling or relating to the topics that we're talking about now, and you're feeling the anxiety or the stress or the pressure of feeling like you're running out of time, you're behind, and you want some extra support, check out my group therapy practice in Midtown Manhattan, NYC Therapeutic Wellness. We have an amazing team of clinicians ready to support you in your journey, to help you feel more grounded, to help you feel more grateful, to help you feel like you're just exactly where you need to be. So check us out at www.nyctherapeuticwellness.com. Hey guys, I'm Beth. Thank you so much for tuning in to Quiet the Clock. If you want to hear more episodes and learn more about how to dismantle societal timelines, live life on your own terms, live life fully and authentically, subscribe to our channel on YouTube, and you can also follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Quiet the Clock Pod.